All right, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, the Elohim of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I want to say peace to each and every one of you in the name of His Son. I always count a blessing each and every day, even for a single time that I can come before you to bring a message that's contained in His Word, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. I come to you today on the 4th of July, and I come to you today asking the same question that Frederick Douglass posed as he gave his speech in 1852. And this speech was to the Rochester's Lady Anti-Slavery Society. And the title of his message was, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." That's what it was entitled. Again, 1852. I asked the same question in 2024. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Because it's not true freedom. Neither was the 13th Amendment. Neither was, before that, the Emancipation Proclamation. Neither is Juneteenth. I want to read a little bit of this to you. So I'm going to read just a little bit of his speech, where he says, "Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in the Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light, my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so cold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? Who so obdurate and dead to the claims of gratitude that would not thankfully acknowledge such priceless benefits? Who so stolid and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee, when the chains of servitude have been torn from his limbs? I am not that man. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. If I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth." So now he alludes to the Psalms there about forgetting Jerusalem. He says, "To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with a popular thing would be treason, most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view, standing there identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. And the same could be said today. Because, and he's saying that in a time where the true Israelites, the so-called Negro in this country, were in chattel slavery. Okay, so now those shackles have been taken off. For the most part, those shackles have been removed. However, you do not have true freedom unless you have what? Unless you have land, unless you have sovereignty. You know, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. And he gives it to whom he will. He gave it to our forefathers, and when we sinned, he took that land back. And it's not only that, he sent us into captivity. And if you have never been back to that land, you have not experienced a true jubilee. Because when you have a jubilee, let's go to Leviticus, because he mentioned the jubilee. Let's go to Leviticus, the 25th chapter, and notice what it says here in verse 9. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. That's on the Day of Atonement. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. Why? Because there's freedom there. If you have never been home, you do not have true freedom. So how did we get in the situation that we're in? Because if you don't understand the spiritual implications, which many do not, certain people are starting to, our people are waking up. But if you don't understand spiritually where we're at, you don't really understand our problem. You don't understand our situation. And that's why we get all these inappropriate solutions like voting. Listen, you call hell, you didn't get anything under Biden, who told you if you don't vote for me, you're not black. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get under Trump. You may get a little bit more, but what you want is actually true freedom. And you don't have true freedom, again, if you are still in the diaspora. Let's pick it up in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. And so that's why these charlatans, these so-called leaders can try to say that you have freedom, but they're just trying to get bigger scraps from the table. That's not what true freedom is. So who are we? We are the people of this book. This same Bible that they misconstrued and tried to use to further enslave us, certainly have enslaved our minds. It also tells of us our identity. This is Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15. It says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Okay, he said, curse shalt thou be in the city, and curse shalt thou be in the field. Curse shall be thy basket and thy store. Curse shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. You're going to be cursed everywhere. Verse 30 says, verse 29 says, and thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness. We want to read this and see if this sounds familiar. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Now we know that was true of slavery, even after slavery, right? When the slave master would go into the slave quarters, tell the man that was there to get out while he lay with his wife. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. We've built this country, and then had the audacity that people would say that you haven't done anything, that you're lazy. For all that we've done. I want to read this here. This is from Arnold Bontemps. This is a Harlem Renaissance poet. It's called his poem. I'm just going to read this. A black man talks of reaping. See, these things you can't really understand them truly unless you understand spiritually where we're coming from. We see what's happened to us, right? Right? Frederick Douglass saw the hypocrisy of America and their Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, born with inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And at the same time, having slaves. At the same time, the rough draft of that says that the king, he trafficked in bodies, and they told Jefferson, you got to take that out. Why? Because we traffic in bodies. He said, oh yeah, I got some slaves myself. So he took it out of the final draft of the Declaration of Independence. The final draft doesn't have an allusion to slavery being one of the things that the king had done that was so heinous. He said, yeah, you're right. Maybe I can only imagine. Maybe he was laying up next to Sally Hemings, his black slave, and he said, maybe I should take that thing about slavery out. But now a black man talks of reaping, says, I have sown beside all waters in my day. I have planted deep within my heart the fear that when the fire would take the grain away. I planted safe against that stark lean year. I scattered seed enough to plant the land in rows from Canada to Mexico. But for my reaping, only what the hand can hold at once is all that I can show. See, he didn't get much for his reaping. We had 246 years of chattel slavery. When that time, we picked over 1 billion tons of just cotton. That's not rice. That's not indigo. That's not all the other agriculture that we did. That's not the structure that our skilled laborers were building. We built the genesis of American wealth was built on the last backs of slaves. And now when you say reparations, they say it's a pipe dream. They say that, you really don't deserve it. You weren't a slave, as if there weren't 100 years of Jim Crow after that. See, they tell Negroes to just accept Juneteenth. They tell Negroes just accept the monument. They tell Negroes just to accept a museum, right? They tell Negroes don't just accept an apology. They tell Negroes we gonna bow down in this solidarity with some kente cloth from Korea for you, right? They tell you anything. They tell you anything, but other people, you know what they give them? Land and money. I say that again. It's not like they didn't give other people reparations. They fund the so-called who are not the people. They give them millions and millions and millions of dollars. They've gotten billions of dollars from the United States, right? The indigenous people got reparations. The Japanese that went in turn during World War II got reparations. But you were 246 years of chattel slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow, and then after that, the era of mass incarceration, of which this president in the office now was instrumental in that. And yet you don't, and yet when you say reparations, it's like you cursing. Well, how can we do that? We don't have any money. You find money for everything else. You find money for anything else that you want to do. You find money to drop bombs. You find money to give Ukraine to fight a proxy war in Russia, leading the world on the brink of World War III. You find money for that, don't you? You find money for whatever you want to find money for. But get a Negro museum. He said, yet what I sold and what the orchard yields, my brother's sons are gathering stalk and root. Small wonder then my children glean in fields. They have not sown and feed on bitter fruit. You don't have what you knew. You don't have wealth. Wealth is generational. You may have some dollars. You don't have true wealth. So back to the book. He said, so you said, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. See, that sentiment, we understand that many of us coming from Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, being sharecroppers and understanding that all that work, we're not benefiting from it. He goes on to say, in verse 32, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. So what is he saying? You're going into what? Your children are going into captivity. And that's what happened with us. Verse 37 says, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. So wherever you go, you're going to be the laughing stock. Wherever you go, there's going to be a byword about you. And that's why people will swim over here and then call you the N-word. Set up shop in your communities and give you bad meat, bad service, bad attitude, and then have something to say about you. While they take your money and send their kids to college and build wealth. While they look at you with disdain and contempt. He said in verse 45, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God to keep his commandments and the statutes which he commanded thee. See, these commandments will be on you. And he said, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder and upon thy seed forever. So when you find the people that fit this, that curse wherever they go, we understand that Israel is a black people. That's what these so-called Jews. That's why they're going through Africa right now, because you got some Israelites still scattered on all nations, still on the African continent, saying, "Yeah, we the Israelites, we the Hebrews. Yeah, let's keep that on the wrap. Let's say you converted. You want some legitimacy, right? We're the only ones that have legitimacy. They are perpetrating the biggest fraud going. They're not the people. They couldn't possibly be the people biblically or historically." And yet they would say they the people and get all the benefits. They're like Esau weeping for a blessing from their father. Bless me also. So when Jacob fell, when Israel fell, they just took upon that identity. But now, they not the people. But nevertheless, I'm going to pick it up in verse 68. He said, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Why Egypt? Because Egypt is Israel's first bondage. You mean to tell me them people, those people were in Egypt? No. You had a black Semitic people amongst some other black people that were not Semitic. But because that's how Moses could be mistaken as an Egyptian. That's how Joseph, the patriarch, could be mistaken as an Egyptian. How? Because they had to look like the Egyptians. We know that the Egyptians were black. They try to make them white. I saw a meme. Somebody was showing Michael Jackson. They were showing Tupac. And they showed him as white. They said in 100 years, people are gonna be saying these people are white. That's what they did. So they say, hey, these Egyptians can't be black. Who built these pyramids? Who had this sacred geometry? Who had all this science and this medicine? They couldn't have came out of a nation of black people. Aliens did it. Yeah, let's say that. Aliens did it. A bunch of foolishness. But now he says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt, or the house of bondage, again with ships. So how did we get here? We got here through slavery. Now, they would try to concoct some cockamamie story to try to apply that to them. No, we the ones that came into bondage by way of slave ships. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. You still not free. Still not free. Even though we don't wear the shackles, unless we incarcerated, we still not free. How so? Because we have not gone home. And Jesus told you that. Yehoshua told you that. This is Luke, the 21st chapter. Because he told you what's going to happen to his people. He says in verse 20, he says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. He's talking about, when you look at what happened in Jerusalem, in 70 AD, when Titus and the Romans came in and ransacked Jerusalem, and then you read, I can show you the historical record where Israel went into the interior of Africa. Many were enslaved then, but they went into the interior of Africa, and then they settled amongst those people, and then they were the ones that were susceptible to being sold as slaves. That's why when you try to go over there talk about my African brother, they look at you like cotton pick if you don't get out of my face. That's why the people that call themselves Hebrews that are still in the land today face persecution from them. Before you get to some white man, a colonist or colonizer, you had persecution from those people. Ask the limb, ask Beta Yisrael. But nevertheless, he goes on to say in verse 24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down to the Gentiles unto the tithes of the Gentiles. He said, be fulfilled. And so that's what Israel is at right now. He told you you're going into bondage on slave ships, and you will be sold as bondmen and bondwomen. Right? And one thing about it, which is ironic, is that since we've been here, there have been pushes to get us out of here. I mean, as a whole, as a collective, that's what Lincoln was. They believed in colonization. So they say, hey, man, get these Negroes out of here. And they still talk about that today. So if you don't like it, get out, go home. First of all, you ain't in a position to say anything to me. My people probably almost certainly have been more likely longer than you and have put in more than you over the years, as opposed to you coming over for some potato famine. Right? So don't come to me. We've been here longer than you. You ain't in a position to tell us you don't like it, go home. That again, the hypocrisy. If you can't critique what's wrong with the country and have a freedom of speech, you can only say something. You can only have that unless you agree. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Who, and then, just to be quite frankly with you, You wouldn't even have a semblance, even an inkling of morality had it not been for lost Negroes during the Civil Rights Movement, who basically gave their lives and their bodies over to a movement. I don't agree with that movement. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with nonviolence. But they showed the hypocrisy of America. They pricked the conscience of America so that wives at home with their aprons watching them with their husbands cry as they see black women getting bit by dogs and children being thrown into jailhouses, and all the while they singing gospel songs and Negro spirituals. I don't believe in nonviolence. I believe it actually to be a immoral action. If you hit Big Mama in the head, the police hit Big Mama in the head with a brick, we got to go to war. Somebody got to die. That's the reality. That's what I believe in. But now let's pick it up at Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. In verse 26. Notice what he said. Now he says this before Israel goes into the land. He says, when thou shalt beget children and children's children, and ye shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves and make a graven image or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord thy God to provoke him to anger. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. So he said before they even inherited the promised land, he said, you're going to go in there, you're going to get kicked out. Then he says, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen. That's the other nations, whither the Lord shall lead you. That's why we're here, 12% of the population. And there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. And that's what we're doing. We are out pagan the pagan, right? We'll worship falsely more so than any idolater. Oh, this is what you're giving us. We're gonna take it to a whole nother level, right? So yeah, these so-called Christians, white Christians, they adulterated Christianity, gave it to the Negro, further enslaved him, and he became more of a Christian than those Christians. Became more of a Christian than those Christians, even though the first Christians, true Christians, were black Judeans. Okay, and to be a Christian was an epithet. But nevertheless, let's pick it up at Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter. Because he's telling you ultimately that he's going to deliver you. This is Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter. Still, you notice, this is how you know you're dealing with the truth. Israel's not in the land at this time. He's telling them what's going to happen. Deuteronomy 30 and verse 1. He says, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse. The blessing we experienced as a people at the height of the kingdom. The curse we've experienced. We're experiencing it now. It's coming to an end, though. He says, the blessing and the curse which I have said before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee. See, we are in these nations right now. It is not a coincidence. I do not believe it is a coincidence that all these so-called Negroes are saying they Israel. They say all these Negroes walking around with shirts talking about they're Hebrew. What? Yeah, you had inklings of that. You had people back in the day at Williams Aldous Crowder. You had Cherry back in the day. You had I believe his last name was Ford, who was with the UNIA. You had men, and you had Israelites who knew, but not to the degree of today. Now, they need the gospel, don't get me wrong, but in understanding who they are to a degree, they have more of that now than ever. So now they calling it to mind. He said, but what we need is repentance as a people, as a collective. He said, as a nation, within a nation. He said, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thy heart, with all thy soul. So we got to turn back unto him. And he said that what's going to happen? That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God has scattered thee. See, that's when you got true freedom. That's when you have a jubilee. And that's what he's going to do when he comes back. He shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. It tells you that in Matthew 24. He said that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. Notice what he says here, verse 4. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And so you want to know what the Lord is going to do? He's going to do the same thing that he did in the past, because he doesn't change. This is Jeremiah. Jeremiah the 16th chapter. Jeremiah 16. Notice what it says in verse 14. It says, therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. And when you read further, he's going to bring them into the wilderness. This didn't happen in 1948. Those people, again, are perpetrating the biggest fraud in human history. He said, behold, I will send for many fishes, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. He's going to gather his people. But I alluded to this. I might as well read it. Matthew the 24th chapter. Matthew 24, because they asked him, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of that coming unto the end of the world? He told them about wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, earthquake, and disease, rise of false prophets. He said, when he therefore says, see the abomination and the desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoso readeth, let them understand. Why? Because for then shall be great tribulation. Now, what's going to happen after great tribulation? Matthew 24 and verse 29 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be dark, and the moon shall not give a light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. Why are they mourning? Hold your finger here and go to Joel. Because he's going to war with them. That's why. And why is he going to war with these people? Why is he going to war with the nations? Joel 3 and 1. For behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. So that's what we're talking about. Captivity. I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's where Yahuwah will judge. That's Armageddon. He says, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land. One of the reasons he's going to war is because he's going to war to redeem Israel. He's going to war for his people. Then it said, and they have, look, notice what the nations have done to his people. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. That's what they did. So that's why he said, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, that all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears, that the weak say I'm strong. He's coming back in flaming fire. And one of the reasons he's doing that, why they gonna mourn? Because you read in Revelation, he's coming back in wrath. And that's what he's telling you here in Matthew 24. So he's coming back, it says, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, notice what it says in Matthew 24 and 31. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Leviticus 25. What did we read there? And if you were listening in Bible study yesterday, this should sound familiar. It says in Leviticus 25 and verse 9, then shalt thou cause the trumpet of Jubilee or freedom to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. And ye shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land until also ye had the trumpet sound, and that's a time of liberty. And all the inhabitants thereof, it shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. That's why you heard the trumpet. That's one of the reasons you're going to hear this trumpet, because Israel is going home. See, that's when you have true, total freedom as a people. So what do we need to do? We need to prepare ourselves as a people to receive this deliverance. What do we need to do? We need to do what was told of old. We were already told what we need to do. See, if we actually do what we supposed to do, the Lord automatically gonna do what he's supposed to do. This is 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter. Now, this is his prayer dedication. Because our solution is not voting, it's not education, it's not taking up arms, right? It's not economic empowerment, it's none of that. We have a spiritual problem and a spiritual solution. 2 Chronicles 6. And for all the so-called Negro leaders and people who think they know so much, you know you've tried everything and it hasn't worked, right? Oh, when I read this, people, because sometimes people can have in their mind, oh, that's not gonna work. That what are you talking about? That's foolish. That's foolish. Did you believe in that Bible? People believe that all the nonsense you spewed for all these decades made Negroes whores for the Democratic Party. A bunch of Democratic hoes. That's what you made the people. And then we look around, you got less than you had under the Republicans. The Republicans don't love you either. Your solution is not in a political party. Then you got some from outside of the country saying, yeah, you need to be Marxist. You a pawn in the game. People don't even realize that. They're walking around Black Lives Matter not realizing that's a Marxist organization. You have entities outside of the United States that want to use the plight of Negroes to push their own agenda. That's what everybody did. That's what these homosexuals did. That's what Bayard Rustin said. Well, yeah, the next stage of the movement has to be, of civil rights has to be for homosexuals, right? You voted for Obama. What did he worst president? Man, it's hard to say anybody's worse than Biden. I would say that actually this might be Obama's third, President Obama's, almost said Obama Biden, Barack Obama's third presidency, or his third term, I should say. When you look at what he did, the banker bailout, the greatest swindle in human history monetarily, when he gave all that money to the people who stole everybody's money, who been stealing everybody's money. Then culturally, he helped to usher in all this nonsense that you're seeing in this LGBTQ. All these things that you're seeing are being perpetuated now. He's the one that's lit up the White House and support in rainbow colors. He's the one that supported that. And then he lulled, and most of all, and even more so, he lulled Negroes to sleep. Well, he never cared about you. He never cared about you. But no, notice what he says in his prayer. Solomon says, he says in verse 36, this is 2 Chronicles 6 and 36. He said, if they sin, talking about his people, if they sin against thee, talking about the Lord, for there is no man which sinneth not, and thou be angry with them and deliver them over before their enemies, and they carry them away captives unto a land far from near. That's where we at. We sinned against the Lord, got kicked out of our land, and he took us in. He sent us into captivity. And by way of ships. And we were sold as bondmen and bondwomen. Notice what it says in verse 37. Yet if they bethink themselves in the land whither they are carried captive, and turn and pray unto thee in the land of their captivity, saying, we have sinned, we have done amiss, and have dealt wickedly. That's what Daniel did as an individual. He acknowledged the sin of the people as an individual. He prayed toward Jerusalem. That's why he was thrown in the lion's den, because he was praying 3 times a day toward Jerusalem. In his captivity, because he was in captivity in Babylon. That's what we need to do as a nation, though. He said, if they return to thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, whether they have carried them, remember we read in Deuteronomy that we're going to return back, whether they have carried them captives and pray toward their land, which thou gavest unto thee, their fathers. Our land is not Detroit. We be claiming all this stuff. We're not from here. South side, nigga, going up gang side. We're not from here. Claiming property we don't have, don't own, renting, and once they gentrify, you're going to be out of there. Everybody talking about Compton. Everybody talking about, look at all these places. Look at Harlem. Oh, yeah, we Harlem. I read something from a Harlem Renaissance poet. Look at Harlem today. Starbucks, gentrify. That's how you know it's over for you. That's how you know it's over. That's how you know when they want you to move, they'll practice benign neglect, but and you won't have anything, the things you're supposed to have as a taxpayer. But once they feel, we don't want this property, now you got to go. But nevertheless, he said, if they return to thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, whether they have carried them captives and prayed toward their land which thou gavest unto their fathers. Again, not Arkansas, not Mississippi, the land he gave to their fathers. and toward the city which thou hast chosen, not Compton, not Detroit, not Harlem, not St. Louis, not Oakland, not Baltimore, Jerusalem. He said, and toward the house which I have built for thy name, then hear thou from heavens, even from thy dwelling place, their prayer and their supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people which have sinned against thee. And this prayer was affirmed. He accepted it. How do you know that? In 2 Chronicles 7 and verse 1. Now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. That was divine confirmation. And the priest could not enter into the house of the Lord because the glory of the Lord had filled the Lord's house. And when all the people of Israel saw how the fire came down and the glory of the Lord upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement and worshiped and praised the Lord, saying, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. And that's what we need to understand. That's what we need to understand. We need to turn back unto him. Verse 12 says, and the Lord appeared to Solomon by night and said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and have chosen this place to myself for an house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, Israel, again, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. That's what we need to do. So what to the slave is the 4th of July in 2024? Nothing. Because it's not true freedom. We were enslaved back then, right? And the ones that were actually truly offering to slaves, at least to get out of physical bondage, wasn't the Americans, it was the British. That's why you had Negroes fought in every war in this country. That's why you had so many of them fight on the side of the British. And then when the British lost, many of them left. They went to Nova Scotia. Some of them went back to Britain. Some of them went to Sierra Leone. After Nova Scotia became very hard to live there, they left and went to Sierra Leone. And others ended up back in slavery. And the ones that basically, because America, what became America, United States of America won, chattel slavery continued. Right? But you have still never been home to your land that the Lord gave to your father. I ain't talking about you going repatriating back to Ghana. I'm talking about you going to the land that he gave your fathers. That's true freedom. See, true people know that. I'm going to end it with this. Talking about the Declaration of Independence. You think of Vietnam. When you think of Vietnam, you think about people who fought the United States. No. That was the end of their run fighting for independence in their own land and having sovereignty. Prior to that, they had to beat the French. Before they beat the United States, the elephant, as Ho Chi Minh called them. He said, we the tiger, they the elephant, right? So large and massive, all these weapons. He said, you got an AK and a grain of rice. I'm gonna just throw people at you. For every 10 you kill, if I kill one of yours, I still win. Right? Massive losses. Why were they willing to do that? Because they understood they didn't want to be oppressed through colonization. They had their own Declaration of Independence where they cited the American Declaration of Independence, where they cited the French documents concerning independence, because the French colonized them. Then the Japanese, they came in and they oppressed them. They fought America, they fought the French, they fought Japan, and then prior to that, 1,000 years, they were staving off China. They were fighting off China. Why? Because they understood what freedom is. And they said, freedom or death. I'm not a communist. I don't believe in communism. But they used it because they wanted to be free, because they understood nationhood. They understood that. And so they were willing to fight and die for it. Negroes don't understand nothing. That's why they're going to be lighting off firecrackers, keeping me up tonight. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith, meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We also live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel. Again, that's at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We have our Stafford, Virginia congregation that meets at the Red Roof Inn at 153 Garrisonville Road at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Again, so if you're in that area, go there and fellowship. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to say peace to everybody that's listening. And it's always my prayer that you were edified.